Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. This episode, I'll be talking about an other list being created by the Democrats tracking former Trump officials, how the Chinese government is into butt stuff and their new COVID tests, how Mike Lindell was kicked off of Twitter, how a dumb gotcha moment just turned into a basically a sign of corruption, and breaking news. Inslee Blast Hospital that offered vaccine appointments to major donors. But before we get started, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you like what you see and you're enjoying what you're listening to, please donate to the show at notcensoredyet.com/donate. It'll really help us out. It'll help us grow and produce more consistent quality content free from outside influence. So let's get started. As people leave government, we expect them to show up on the doorsteps of corporate America. We are Oversight Executive Director Revers said. A left-leaning advocacy group has announced it will create a list tracking former Trump administration officials' future endeavors. The Campaign Against Corporate Complicity has committed to tracking former administration personnel since fall 2020, but said that the initiative has gained steam in the wake of the January 6th Capitol riot, according to Bloomberg. So my problem with lists is I understand that the left does not like the right, but I don't recall any time that the right wants to make a list of the left where they want to basically dox where they work, where they want to basically they're calling on corporations to not hire these individuals. The group is a collaboration between public interest organizations Accountable.us and American Oversight. While the group has labeled itself as nonpartisan, it does not officially disclose its funding and has major staffing overlap with Democratic and liberal groups, according to the news outlet. The organization will specifically track several Trump administration officials associated with Trump's immigration policies, including former acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf, former Homeland Security Secretary Kirsten Nielsen, and former top Trump advisor Stephen Miller. It will also monitor one-time counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, and former Interior Secretary David Bernhardt. As people leave government, we expect them to show up on the doorsteps of corporate America. In a statement Tuesday officially announcing the initiative, Evers and Accountable.us, President Kyle Herring called on major corporation CEO not to hire officials in question. That's bananas. Why shouldn't they hire these people? These people have valuable insight into American government. They have ins. They could be used as lobbyists, whether you like it or not. These people, there's a reason why these people go from the government to corporate world, because guess what? They know the new leadership. They know the goings on in the government. And basically putting these people on lists, all it's going to do is further polarize the country. The people who companies hire reflect their corporate values. If companies hire senior level officials that engaged in Trump's attempt to undermine and violate the rule of law, they are complicit in the cruel, undemocratic, and dangerous policies and rhetoric of his administration, Herrick said in a statement. In the statement, the group said it would specifically apply pressures to CEOs of major media organizations, publishers, and public speaking firms. Government service does not guarantee private employment. In fact, it should not. And American business should not reward the behavior of the Trump administration with the well-oiled revolving door that traditionally spins at moments of transition, the organization said in a statement. So, I agree. The well-oiled door, it should not just mean that you go from working in the government to making a multi-million-dollar media job. They're correct about that. But to go, hey, we're going to pressure for the sole sin of working for President Trump, I don't believe Kellyanne Conway had anything to do with the Capitol riots. And they're saying, hey, we're going to keep an eye on her. We're going to ensure that she doesn't find a job. That just sounds like hate. That sounds like we're keeping a list. We're making sure that if you are found out to have ever worked for Trump, or if you ever supported him, or eventually it's going to be if you're ever a conservative, if you ever voted red, you're going to be put on a list and you will never be able to find work. And that is extremely dangerous. COVID-19 anal swab testing in China. And you thought the nasal test was uncomfortable. China is using anal swabs to test its residents for COVID 19 amid a new wave of the outbreak. And local experts say that the method is a more accurate way of detecting the bug, according to a report. The derriere detection method is being used more frequently in Beijing after a 9-year-old boy tested positive for the highly contagious UK variant of the virus last month. But anal swabs have been used there since last year, reserved for individuals living in COVID 19 hotspots such as Shanghai. Nasal and throat swabs remain the most popular methods because of their convenience and speed, according to the outlet. Of course, anal swabs aren't as convenient as throat swabs, so they're only being used in individuals in key quarantine areas. This will reduce the return of false positives. So basically, it's not even just it's a probe. It's going in 2 inches. It's not just a swab. It's 2 inches. It's a legitimate amount. What we found is that in some infected patients, the coronavirus survives for a longer period of time in their digestive tract or excrement than in their respiratory tract. So basically, that you'll stop having it in your nose or in your throat, but you'll still have it in the mucus uh, of your poop chute. I thought that was pretty funny. It made me laugh. Tweet from Michael Tracy. Lindell's office was allegedly committing repeated violations of Twitter's civic integrity policy, which prohibits claims that could undermine faith in civic processes such as elections. Thank God we have this tech clergy to mandate faith-based adherence to civic virtues. Associated Press. Twitter has permanently banned My Pillow CEO Mike Lindell's account after he continually perpetuated the baseless claim that Donald Trump won the 2020 presidential election. But all I have to say is this, or he also says, one of these tech clerics have ever considered that if the virtues of our hollow civic process need to be defended with increasingly extreme censorship action, there might be something a little more fundamental at issue. My concern is, well, I'm old enough to remember the entire 4 years Trump was called illegitimate. I'm pretty sure Stacey Abrams said that the election in Georgia was stolen from her due to voter suppression. So if you can't say that it's stolen, if you can't say there's fraud, you can't say it's illegitimate. All of these words were were said for 4 years, and none of those Democrats are banned. So I don't understand what the issue is. I like one standard. One standard makes things easy. Rules for thee and not for me is not something that flies in my book because it just screams hypocrisy. It just makes life more confusing than it needs to be. Jumping over to David French, a dumb gotcha just turned corrupt. A tweet from Eugene Kontorovich. This is staggering. Newsweek went back and rewrote a 2015 story that had described grads of Ranger School as Rangers to match its present day story accusing Tom Cotton, who graduated the Ranger School, of not being a Ranger. I knew it would be bad, but not this bad. So here's the edited version. Or actually, here's what National Review wrote. Cotton's communication director, Carolyn Tabler, tells National Review that Cotton's office contacted Newsweek this weekend to point out that Newsweek had identified the female Ranger School graduates as Army Rangers in 2015. Newsweek responded by editing its 2015 story to conform to Salon's new smear of Cotton. The 2015 Newsweek story no longer says that 2 women will become Rangers. The edited version says they will be allowed to wear the coveted Ranger tab on their uniform. The original Newsweek story can be viewed here. If you want to get a sense of how insincere Salon's attack on Cotton is, just take a look at all the times Salon articles refer to graduates of Ranger School as Army Rangers. So this is a thing that, so Tom Cotton went to Ranger School, he earned his tab, and he went to a regular infantry unit where he was a platoon commander, I believe. I'm not exactly sure everything about his career, but all I know is he had the Ranger tab. So he was a Ranger. So the best civilian description of this is you went to law school, right? You got your JD, you passed the bar exam, but you never actually practiced law. You just went into corporate law and you basically wrote contracts all day. So you weren't actually practicing law, but you're still a lawyer. If you wanted to go into court and go defend somebody, you could do that, but you're just a paperwork jockey and that's all you're doing. And that's fine. But you're not a sexy trial attorney like here in Texas, where there's a bunch of personal injury attorneys that make millions and millions of dollars unethically. But instead, you're just basically doing paperwork all day. And, everybody does their thing. So instead of him going to a Ranger battalion, he went to an infantry platoon. And that's fine. He is still a Ranger. He still did something that 99% of the military does not do. So I don't understand what the problem is. If Newsweek thought that people who went to Ranger school became Rangers, you can't change that standard 5 years from now. Kind of like what I said, you can't place your judgments from today 5 years ago. You need to build upon that. You can change your definition. You can now say that those women who are not in Ranger Battalion are not Rangers anymore. They just happen to possess the coveted Ranger tab. That's fine. You just downgrade them, I suppose. Or you can just say, we were wrong. Our war against Tom Cotton is unfounded and we admit defeat, because basically they're just being exposed for just being evil, because that's all this is. You're lying. You're shadow editing and you're lying and gaslighting your readers. It's bananas. Breaking news in the past hour: Inslee blasts hospital that offered vaccine appointments to major donors. Washington Governor Jay Inslee castigated a Bellevue-based hospital system over an email in which leadership offered appointments for coronavirus vaccines to major donors. We're pleased to share that we have 500 new open appointments in the Overlake COVID-19 vaccine clinic beginning this afternoon and tomorrow, Saturday, January 23rd, and next week. Molly Stearns, Chief Development Officer at Overlake Medical Center and Clinics, said in an email, according to the Seattle Times. If in fact they were giving preference to some VIP lists, it's not the way to do it. That is not acceptable for us. We need to give everybody a fair shot at the vaccine, Inslee said in a news conference. We've got to maintain public credibility in the system. I'm told that whatever they were doing has stopped, and that's good news. Florida nursing homes and hospital systems have reportedly offered similar VIP access to donors. The whole idea of jumping the line because you're rich is morally reprehensible, and I agree to that. Everybody should have equal access to medicine. It shouldn't be an at least to the vaccine. So I understand if you're rich and you can afford like extremely experimental vaccines, or not experimental vaccines, but experimental medical treatments that may cost millions and millions of dollars, and you just happen to be really, really rich, then fine. If you're willing to pay millions and millions of dollars for that experimental treatment, go for it. When you're trying to combat a plague with a scarce resource, you really have to expect hospitals and their donors and others connected with them should have to wait with everybody else. Well, that brings up a whole question about equity, I suppose. We're under pressure to vaccinate people who are eligible and increase capacity. In hindsight, we could certainly look back and say this wasn't the best way to do it. The board said that the hospital system was overtaxed after vaccine eligibility was expanded last week to anyone 65 and older. After Overlake ramped up vaccinations, he said the system was left with 1,400 slots to fill and began emailing people whose contact information was readily available. It was never intended to be a donor event. So I can kind of see where they're coming from. They go, hey, we have all these people's name and email addresses because they happen to donate to us, and we have 1,400 slots. Well, let's just send out this information because we know who these people are, and they just so happen to donate to us. Is it the most ethical thing? Probably not, but I understand where they're coming from when they go, hey, we definitely have these people's updated contact information because we always see these people when we have events and they come here and they're rubbing shoulders with people in the city. That's the way it is. But I also see the other hand of the argument, basically saying, hey, it just screams corruption. Why didn't you just post something on social media saying, hey, we have 1,400 slots, first come, first serve. We don't want to throw any of this vaccine away. I guess either option would have been problematic, I suppose, because then you would have ran into the problem with Florida. You would have people sleeping in line overnight, people getting upset about that, and they go, hey, look, we had 1,400 slots. We just wanted to make sure we didn't waste any of the vaccine. And we just said, cattle call, everybody come here. If you want it, come get it. But I guess reaching out to the 1,400 people saying, hey, RSVP, we're having a donor event, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't look good, but you ensure that you have 1,400 people there and it's not chaotic. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Either way, there's going to be problems. There's going to be people unhappy about the way they administered the vaccine for the 1,400 people. And I guess it is what it is when it comes to that. And hindsight's 2020. Don't put out a donor invitation. It won't be well received in Washington from here on out. But that's gonna be it for today, friends. If breaking news happens, if the world starts to burn, I'll try to post something up, unless YouTube crashes, in which case I'll never see you guys again. But if that's not the case, I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Y'all have a good one. Later. Bye.